Hey guys, in today's video, I bring you a surprising story that will change the way you see the spiritual world. Let's meet Aurora Lysell, a pediatric nurse who died 7 minutes and 42 seconds after a serious car accident. During that time, she experienced something incredible. She encountered angels, witnessed spiritual battles, and discovered a shocking truth about their role in our lives. What Aurora saw on the other side will leave you speechless. So, before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any content like this. Get ready for an intense and eye-opening journey that you will never forget. It was an ordinary morning in Charleston, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled Aurora Lysell's small kitchen. The clock said 6:45 a.m., dear, and she was adjusting her white nurse's uniform blouse. His mother, Eleanor, was leafing through a newspaper on the table, her glasses almost on the tip of her nose. "You're going straight home after work today, right? I don't want you driving so late on the road," Eleanor insisted, giving her a worried look. Aurora smiled, although it was a tired smile. "Yes, Mom, I promise. I know you worry, but everything will be okay," he replied, trying to reassure her. Their relationship was affectionate, but Eleanor could not hide her anxiety since her husband died years ago in a traffic accident. This concern seemed to transfer to her daughter. Aurora's life was predictable. The work at the children's hospital was demanding, but it also filled her with a sense of duty. But lately, she felt like something was out of place. The nights became longer, filled with an inexplicable feeling of emptiness. He attended church on Sundays, but his faith seemed to have lost its luster. Prayers had become automatic words. On the way to the hospital that morning, Aurora put on her favorite playlist. Soft country music accompanied the backdrop of Charleston, with its moss-covered trees and historic mansions. She always thought the city was beautiful, but that day, she barely noticed the details. She was distracted, perhaps thinking about the busy shift that awaited her. Shortly after noon, work picked up its usual frenetic pace. Children crying, parents worried, and Aurora running between exam rooms. "You never stop, Lysell," joked a colleague, handing her more charts. Aurora shrugged and continued. That's how it worked. A relentless routine that left no room for reflection. Her shift ended later, and she decided to take a faster route home, something she normally avoided. "I was exhausted and just wanted to fall into bed." It was on this road that everything changed. She didn't see the truck cross the road until the last second. The sound of twisted metal was the last thing he heard before everything went out. The impact was devastating. The screeching sound of writhing metal and shattering glass seemed to echo in a distant void. Aurora felt no pain. In fact, he didn't feel anything. There was just an eerie stillness, as if all the chaos around was silenced. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the car. She floated above the scene, observing everything from an impossible perspective. This can't be real, he thought, as he saw her inert body trapped in the hardware. His red hair was stained with blood, and rescuers were desperately trying to open the driver's door. "The head trauma is serious. We need a defibrillator here," a voice called. Aurora recognized that clinical tone. It was the kind of urgency she herself often conveyed in the hospital hallways. But now, she was the patient. As he tried to understand what was happening, a soft light began to appear at the edges of his peripheral vision. It wasn't the cold light of a headlamp or a flashlight. It was warm, comforting, almost as if it emanated love. "Aurora," a sweet, firm voice called to her, not by sound, but by a sensation direct to her heart. She turned toward the light and saw shapes materializing. Shapes made of pure energy, radiant but without defined features. Each one seemed to pulse with life, but in a way unlike anything she knew. It was as if they communicated thoughts and emotions directly to his soul. "You're safe," one of them said. Or maybe she was just thinking so loudly that she could hear. Who are you?" Aurora asked, still trying to understand if she was dreaming, dead, or trapped in some in-between state. "I am Ardaniel," replied one of the forms, standing out from the others. He seemed bigger, brighter, with a presence that exuded authority and gentleness at the same time. "I have been your guardian since the moment you were born." Aurora was in shock. "So, is it true? We have guardian angels." She felt like she already knew the answer, but hearing it directly was something completely different. Ardaniel laughed softly, almost like a breeze. "Yes, we have always been with you, Aurora." As he spoke, The light around him began to intensify, creating a path. Ardaniel extended a hand made of pure energy. "Come with me. There is something you need to understand." Aurora hesitated, looking back to where her body lay still as the paramedics worked frantically. "Don't worry about it now," Ardaniel assured. "Trust in me." With a mix of fear and curiosity, she accepted the outstretched hand and took the first step towards the light. As soon as Aurora touched Ardaniel's hand, she felt a wave of warmth that seemed to envelop every part of her consciousness. There were no words to describe that feeling. It was like being immersed in pure and absolute love. The light around her turned into a path, gently pulsing with each step she took. Even though she still felt scared, an inner voice reassured her, saying she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Where are we going?" Aurora asked, looking around at the infinite space of light and energy. "To the place where you can see the truth," replied Ardaniel, with a calm that seemed to dissolve any doubt in his heart. Suddenly, the environment around him changed. She was no longer surrounded by pure light, but in a space that looked like a cross between a movie theater and a celestial archive. Aurora saw images of her life begin to form before her. Some scenes were sharp and detailed, while others seemed blurry, like distant memories. "You are about to revisit your life, Aurora," Ardaniel explained. "But this time, you will see what you couldn't see before." The first scene that appeared was of Aurora at 5 years old, running through the backyard of her house. She stopped abruptly when she saw a car speeding down the street, right where she would have been if she hadn't tripped. Aurora observed the scene like a spectator, but now she saw something that was not visible before, a luminous hand that gently pushed her back, causing her to stumble at the exact moment the car passed. "Was that you?" she asked, her eyes filling with tears. Ardaniel nodded. "You still had a lot to live for." The scene changed, showing Aurora as a teenager, hesitant to accept a ride from a group of friends. She vaguely remembered that day and the inexplicable feeling of discomfort that made her refuse. Now he saw Ardaniel at his side, whispering in his conscience, "Don't get in that car." That ride would have resulted in a fatal accident, something she never knew about. "You're always there, aren't you?" Aurora asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," replied Ardaniel, "but we can never interfere without your consent, even if it is unconscious. We respect free will above all." As more moments of her life unfolded before her, Aurora began to notice a pattern. Every intuition, every coincidence, every moment of inexplicable comfort had an origin. The angels were always there, guiding and protecting. However, the journey was not just about protection. Ardaniel took Aurora to scenes where she herself was an instrument of light, like the day she comforted a desperate mother in the hospital, or helped a coworker overcome a loss. These small acts of love and kindness have an impact you would never imagine, Ardaniel explained. They strengthen the light and help overcome the darkness. Aurora was amazed, but she felt that something more was coming. "What happens now?" she asked, unable to contain her curiosity. "Now you will see what is beyond your individual experience," replied Ardaniel, as the surrounding scenery began to transform again. The scenery around Aurora dissolved once again, giving way to something completely different. She was no longer in a peaceful, comforting space. Instead, I was in an environment that pulsed with intense, conflicting energy. It was as if the air was alive, filled with invisible tensions, as sparks of light flickered and disappeared around him. "Welcome to the spiritual battlefield," said Ardaniel, his voice heavy with gravity. Aurora felt a chill run through her consciousness. "Battle?" she asked, taking in her surroundings with growing uneasiness. "Are you telling me there are fights going on?" "Here, not just here," replied Ardaniel, as a beam of light shot across space, colliding with a dense shadow that evaporated on impact. "These battles happen everywhere, all the time, on Earth and beyond. They are fights for the soul of humanity, for the balance between light and dark. And most importantly, you are part of it, like everyone else." Aurora looked more closely and saw translucent figures, some as luminous as Ardaniel, others made of a darkness that seemed to absorb all the light around them. These shadows had no defined shape, but they exuded a feeling of despair, hatred, and chaos. "Who, or what are these things?" asked Aurora, her tone thick with fear. "They are the manifestations of darkness," Ardaniel explained. "They feed on human choices, on pain, on anger, on despair, but make no mistake, just as they exist, The light also exists, always ready to fight for good. Before Aurora could respond, a scene took shape before her. It was a hospital, with doctors running through the corridors, while patients agonized in their beds. In a corner, she saw a man about to make a drastic decision, giving in to despair. "Look," said Ardaniel, pointing to the man. "The darkness is trying to reach you." Aurora saw a shadow approach the man, enveloping him in a dense fog. But before the shadow could take root, a figure of light appeared, placing a hand on his shoulder and whispering something that made him stop. "He is being inspired," Ardaniel explained. "Sometimes all it takes is a spark of hope to break the grip of darkness." As she watched, Aurora began to realize that these battles were not fought with weapons or violence, but with emotional and spiritual energies. Love, compassion, and faith were the weapons of light, while hate, doubt, and despair strengthened the darkness. "But why does this need to happen? Why can't we live without this constant struggle?" she asked, confused. "Because humanity was created with free will," replied Ardaniel. "You have the power to choose, and that choice sets the balance. This is why the forces of light and dark fight so intensely. Every choice matters. Every action has an impact." Aurora felt the weight of these words as she saw more scenes of spiritual battles. A doctor saving a life with effort beyond the ordinary, a mother praying for her sick son, a teacher inspiring a student to believe in themselves. At all these moments, angels were present, helping, guiding, protecting. "Now you understand," said Ardaniel, turning to Aurora. "The light never gives up, but it needs human allies, those who choose love, kindness, and hope. This is what strengthens our power and keeps the darkness at bay." Aurora felt her heart fill with determination. She had never thought of her life as something so important, but now she realized that even small acts had a greater purpose. "What about me? How can I help?" she asked, her voice firm. "You already help," Ardaniel replied, with a soft smile. "But your mission has just begun." After witnessing the invisible battles between light and darkness, Aurora felt as if her heart was a vessel overflowing with emotion. Love, hope, surprise, and even a little fear mixed together as she processed everything she had learned. Ardaniel led her to a new space, more serene and luminous, where she felt the presence of something greater, something divine. "Why am I seeing all this?" Aurora asked, her voice still filled with doubt. "Why show these things to me and not the rest of the world?" Ardaniel stopped and looked deeply at her. "Because you need to understand the role you have in this world, Aurora. Every human being is important, but few can realize the depth of their impact. You were chosen to receive this vision because you have a purpose that you have not yet fully understood." Before she could ask what that meant, images from her own life began to emerge again. But this time, they weren't revisions of past moments. They were scenes from the future. She saw herself in the hospital, holding the hand of a tearful young mother as she offered her words of comfort. The view changed, showing Aurora on a stage, speaking to an attentive crowd about her experience. Once again, the scene transformed, now revealing a child playing happily, healthily, while his mother whispered a prayer of thanks that seemed to echo across the universe. "Every act of love you perform creates a rippling impact," said Ardaniel, interrupting his contemplation. "You may not see the immediate results, but they are there. The love you give strengthens the field of light that protects humanity and inspires others to do the same." Aurora looked at him, feeling the weight of what was shown to her. "So, that's it. My purpose is simply to love." "It seems so simple," she said with a nervous laugh. "Simple, but not easy," Ardaniel corrected. "Love takes courage. It demands that you choose the light even in the midst of darkness, that you forgive when it's easier to hold a grudge, that you offer hope when all seems lost. There is nothing more powerful in the universe than love, Aurora. It is the essence of the Creator and what keeps everything in balance." Suddenly, Aurora felt an even stronger presence around her. It was as if the light itself was alive, pulsing with an energy that radiated unconditional love. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Is this God?" he asked, almost voiceless. "It is his love," replied Ardaniel. "The love that created you, that created the world, and that never abandons anyone, even in the darkest moments." Aurora remained there for a moment, absorbing every fragment of that truth, "And what do I do now?" she asked finally, her voice filled with new determination. "You live," said Ardaniel, smiling, "but not just for yourself. She lives to spread the light, to be a channel of that love in the world. That is your mission, Aurora, and you have everything you need to fulfill it." Aurora stood up, feeling different, as if a new fire was lit inside her. She knew she still had a lot to learn and challenges to face, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had found something missing in her life, a purpose. Aurora felt a change in the environment around her. The soft light that surrounded her began to fade, as if she was being pulled back into her physical body. "Wait," she exclaimed, turning to Ardaniel. "I'm not ready yet. There is so much I need to understand." The angel watched her with a look of understanding and tenderness. "You are ready, Aurora. Always has been. Now it's time to return. What you experienced here will stay with you and continue to guide you." Aurora tried to resist, but an irresistible force seemed to push her back, like a gentle but powerful current. The surrounding light began to fragment, becoming intermittent flashes as the sound of human voices gradually filled his ears. "She's back. We did it." It was Dr. Nathan Caldwell's voice, echoing in the background. Aurora opened her eyes, blinking against the cold light of the hospital's fluorescent lights. Her head throbbed, and every part of her body felt like it weighed tons, but she was alive. "You gave us quite a scare, Lysel," said Caldwell, with a smile of relief. "You were technically dead for 7 minutes and 42 seconds. I can't explain how come, but you came back." Aurora looked at him, still stunned. The memories of her experience were fresh in her mind, so vivid that it was as if she could still feel Ardaniel's presence at her side. 7 minutes and 42 seconds, she murmured, almost to herself. "It seems like forever." Caldwell sat next to his bed, holding a tablet with medical readings. His body has been through enormous trauma, but what intrigues me is that his vital signs are much better than we expected. "It's like something is protecting you." Aurora tried to smile, but tears started running down her face. "I know what protected me," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Caldwell frowned, confused. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not now," Aurora replied, her voice firm. "But one day, I will tell you everything." As he stepped aside to give the patient space, Aurora looked down at her hands. They were marked by scratches and bruises, evidence of the accident, but for her they represented something much bigger. Her survival was a miracle. In the following days, Aurora faced the arduous recovery process. Every movement was painful, and the nights were filled with intense dreams, many of which brought flashes of his spiritual journey. But she also began to notice something different, small signs in her everyday life, like clearer intuitions and coincidences that seemed carefully orchestrated. One morning, while watching the sunrise from the window of her hospital room, Aurora felt an indescribable calm come over her. "I came back for a reason," he thought, "and I'm not going to waste this second chance." Aurora's return to life brought not only a recovering body, but also a transformed mind and soul. As the days passed in the hospital, she began to notice subtle signs of something greater operating around her, as if the veil between the physical and spiritual world had become translucent. Soon after her discharge, still using a cane to walk, Aurora got her first glimpse of what she considered to be a divine sign. She was in her kitchen, trying to make a cup of tea, when she heard her mother's soft voice in the next room, reading aloud from the Bible. The verse talked about angels who guarded the paths of the righteous. Just as her mother finished, a light breeze passed through the window, stirring a small white feather that was resting on the counter. Aurora took the quill, holding it carefully. "Is that you, Ardaniel?" she murmured to herself, a shy smile forming on her lips. A feeling of familiar warmth washed over her, and she felt without a shadow of a doubt that she was not alone. As the days passed, these moments became more frequent. While walking in a nearby park, Aurora saw a boy fall from his bicycle. Before she could rush to help him, a woman she had never seen before appeared out of nowhere and tended to the boy with impressive skill. Aurora tried to get closer to thank the woman, but she had disappeared as if she had never been there. "This is real," thought Aurora, her heart warming. In addition to visible signs, Aurora began to experience something even deeper, an almost supernatural intuition. One day, while driving through the city, he felt an urgent sensation to change his usual route. Without hesitation, he turned in the opposite direction. Later, He discovered that a serious accident had occurred on the road he used to take. "I know that was you, Ardaniel," he whispered, tears in his eyes. At the hospital, her approach to working as a nurse also changed. She noticed things that previously went unnoticed. A father who needed a word of comfort, a child who seemed to be afraid of something beyond the visible. In all these moments, Aurora felt an inner strength that guided her. She began to listen more closely to her intuitions, believing them to be angelic inspirations. One of the most striking changes happened during a night shift. A mother arrived at the hospital in a panic, holding a baby with a high fever. Aurora felt a wave of peace invade her, a calm that seemed not to be hers. As she assessed the baby, she remembered a medical protocol she had studied years before that saved the child's life. The mother, in tears, thanked him. "You're like an angel," he said, not knowing how much that phrase meant to Aurora. Over time, Aurora began to see these coincidences as something more. They were constant reminders of her spiritual journey and her mission. "They're always here," she thought, becoming more and more certain that the angels not only protected her, but also worked through her. That night, while looking at the starry sky from her balcony, Aurora felt Ardaniel's presence again. It was like a whisper in her soul, a reminder that she was exactly where she needed to be. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said, her voice breaking. For the first time in a long time, she felt complete, knowing that her life had a greater purpose. Aurora's moment of transformation was not a one-time event, but an ongoing journey that unfolded day by day. Each sign, each intuition, and each angelic intervention seemed to build a larger mosaic, revealing a mission that was now clear: to share their experience, to spread hope, faith, and love. A month after her recovery, Aurora received an unexpected invitation. A local pastor, who heard about her miracle from one of the hospital nurses, asked her to share her story at a small church gathering. "I don't know if I'm ready," Aurora said hesitantly into the phone. "I'm not a preacher, just a nurse." "That's all you need to be," replied the pastor. "Your testimony is more powerful than you know. You're not just telling your story, you're showing people that they are never alone." On the day of the meeting, Aurora felt her hands sweat as she walked up to the pulpit. The small congregation looked at her curiously. She took a deep breath, feeling a comforting presence beside her, and began to speak. "My name is Aurora Lysell, and a few months ago, I died. I was declared clinically dead for 7 minutes and 42 seconds, but I came back, and what I experienced in that time completely changed the way I view life, death, and everything in between." Aurora shared her journey with genuine emotion, describing the angels, reviewing her life, and the spiritual battles she had witnessed. She talked about how small acts of kindness and love can be more powerful than we realize, and how angels are always there, guiding and protecting, even in the darkest moments. When he finished, the congregation was completely silent. A woman in the front row began to cry, and soon others did too. After the service, people approached Aurora, sharing their own stories of inexplicable intuitions and moments when they felt something greater had interceded for them. Aurora realized her mission was not just to tell her story, but to create a space for others to share theirs too. As her message spread, Aurora began receiving invitations to speak in other places, schools, hospitals, and even small radio programs. His story reached people who had never considered the existence of a spiritual world, but who now felt inspired to seek something greater. At one of his talks, a young woman named Lydia approached Aurora with tears in her eyes. "I was ready to give up on everything," said Lydia, "but your story gave me hope. You are proof that we are not alone." Aurora held the young woman's hands, feeling a wave of warm energy pass through her body. "Lydia, you are not alone, never has been, and never will be. There is infinite love all around you, waiting to guide you." As she continued her mission, Aurora realized that she didn't need answers to every question. She did not need to fully understand how the spiritual world worked, nor why she had been chosen for this experience. All that mattered was that with each story shared, more people felt the touch of light. One night, while writing notes for a new lecture, Aurora heard a soft but firm voice echo in her mind. "Continue. We are with you." She smiled, feeling the same peace she had felt in Ardaniel's presence. His mission was just beginning. The impact of Aurora's story grew in unexpected ways. What started as small talks at local churches and schools turned into something much bigger. Soon, Aurora was being invited to share her experience at community events, conferences, and even radio shows. Each time she told her story, she felt a greater inner strength, as if the light she had experienced during her near-death experience was flowing through her. At one of these talks, a young pastor named Ethan approached Aurora after the event. He seemed emotional, with teary eyes and a trembling voice. "Aurora, I want to thank you for your courage in sharing what you experienced. I have struggled with doubts about my faith for years, but hearing from you reminded me why I chose to follow this path." He squeezed her hand tightly. "You're not just touching hearts, you're changing lives." Aurora was deeply moved. It wasn't uncommon for people to approach her to share how her message had impacted them, but each story carried a special weight. On another occasion, a mother and her 10-year-old son came to her after a talk at a hospital. The woman held the boy's hands tightly, as if she was searching for something solid to anchor her emotions. "Aurora," he began, his voice breaking, "my son almost died last year. Throughout the process, I felt something telling us to hope. I never knew what it was, but now, listening to you, I think it was the angels guiding us. Thank you for helping me understand this." As these stories accumulated, Aurora realized that the impact of her mission went far beyond inspiring. She was helping people revive their faith, not just in God, but in the goodness and purpose of life. At one particularly packed lecture, a local reporter heard her account and wrote an article titled, "The Nurse Who Came Back from the Dead, A Message of Light in Dark Times." The article attracted more attention, leading Aurora to reach an even larger audience. But not everything was easy. As the notoriety of his story grew, skeptics also emerged. Some people said their experience was the product of a brain in a state of trauma or hallucinations. "You will never convince everyone," Ardaniel whispered into her conscience one night when she felt discouraged. "Your mission is not to prove anything, but to plant seeds of light. The rest is their choice." Even in the face of criticism, Aurora found strength in the countless lives she touched. People started sharing stories of how acts of kindness and small signs changed their days. In a rural community where she had spoken in a small chapel, residents began to gather for charity, inspired by her message that every gesture of love counts. One of the most memorable moments happened during a charity event at a pediatric hospital. A child recovering from a serious illness was called to the stage to share his progress. As she spoke, Aurora felt a surge of emotion and intuition. The girl held an amulet in the shape of an angel. At the end of the event, Aurora found her and asked about the amulet. "My grandmother gave it to me," replied the girl. "She said that angels take care of us. I think you might know some, don't you?" Aurora smiled and hugged the girl, feeling flooded with familiar warmth. "Yes, dear," he replied, his voice breaking. "I know." Aurora knew her impact was not measured in numbers or applause, but in the silent stories that emerged from every corner her message reached. The love she spread was a direct reflection of the light she had experienced and the mission entrusted to her. For her, that was enough. It was a calm night in Charleston, and Aurora sat on the porch of her house, watching the starry sky. The gentle breeze carried the salty scent of the nearby ocean, and the city lights twinkled in the distance. Despite all the impact that her story had caused, Aurora still had moments of deep introspection, where she sought to understand the meaning of everything she had experienced. That night, he felt a familiar presence by his side, even without seeing or hearing anyone. It was Ardaniel, she knew. "You are here," he said in a low voice, not waiting for a response, but feeling confirmation in the warmth that enveloped his heart. It was as if the divine light was there again, guiding his thoughts. Closing her eyes, Aurora began to reflect on her journey to that point. She remembered the accident, the moment she saw her body inert, and the peace she felt upon entering the spiritual plane. She thought about the angels who welcomed her, the review of her life, and the invisible battles she witnessed. But above all, he remembered the main message entrusted to him, the transformative power of love. Aurora decided it was time to record everything she had learned. He took out a notebook and began to write, allowing his words to flow freely, as if they were inspired directly by the presence he felt next to him. "If there's anything I've learned, it's that no one is truly alone," he began. "There is a greater force, an infinite love, that surrounds us in every moment. Even in the darkest hours, when everything seems lost, the light is there, waiting for us to choose it." She continued writing, remembering angels and the role they play in human life. They have been by our side from the moment we take our first breath. They guide us, protect us, and inspire us, but they never force us. Free will is a divine gift, and every choice we make contributes to the battle between light and darkness. Aurora paused, feeling a tear run down her face. He thought of the people he had met on his journey, the young shepherd who regained his faith, the desperate mother who found comfort, the child who held the angel amulet. Each of these stories was a reminder of the impact of small acts of kindness. "Love is not easy," she wrote. "It takes courage. It demands that we choose forgiveness over resentment, hope over despair, light over darkness. But it's worth it, because in the end, it's love that connects us to all that is divine." When she finished writing, Aurora looked up at the sky again, where the stars shone like little beacons in the darkness. "Thank you," he whispered, feeling completely at peace. She knew her mission didn't end there. There were more people to inspire, more lives to touch, more light to spread. That night was the beginning of something new. Aurora posted her words in a simple but powerful book that has become a source of hope for thousands. She continued to speak, but now she also dedicated herself to projects that promoted acts of kindness, encouraging others to realize the impact of their choices. His final message was clear, and he always ended his talks with the same words: "You are never alone. There is infinite love all around you, waiting for you to choose it. And by choosing the light, you transform the world, an act of love at a time." Aurora Lysell not only survived a near-death experience, but was reborn with a divine purpose: to be a beacon of hope and love in a world that is often lost in darkness. Her journey is a powerful reminder that even in the most difficult times, light is always within reach, waiting for those who have the courage to seek it. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.